All right, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee meeting for April 14th. If there's members of the public watching who don't usually get to watch our committee meetings, this is something we do between our council meetings. We have a series of standing committees that let us have a little bit less formal conversations we have at council, and a lot of the pre-work of our conversations happens at these. And they're kind of interesting things in that all members of council are welcome to come and take part in the conversation, but it's worth noting that only committee members are allowed to make motions and vote. So for this particular committee meeting, the members are myself, Councillor Thiessen, Councillor Clayton, and Mayor Given. So you might see everybody else chiming in on the conversation, but not on the voting, and that's why if you see that. Anyways, we will start with the Director's Service Area update, and I'll hand it over to Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. We'll start off in economic development. The economic development team worked with the Chamber of Commerce and the County of Grande Prairie to develop the Advisory Services Voucher Program that came to Council last week. Each community contributed $25,000, and it gives businesses access to a pot of money for advisory services to help them navigate the current situation. Within the first 24 hours, they had received 2 applications, and they continue to receive applications into the program. As well, the economic development team is supporting the Grande Prairie Regional Emergency Partnership, acting as the business liaison in constant contact with the key supply chain pieces within the community, just making sure that we have up-to-date numbers on supplies that the community needs, as well as any of the issues that the businesses are having. In energy and environment, we launched the Grande Prairie Grows program on April 9th, which allowed households to register to receive a package to start doing some indoor gardening. I think we may have underestimated pent-up demand for some activities, as we are fully subscribed at the 1,300 packages, I think, on the first day. And I believe most of it, or if not all of them, have been delivered or picked up. We had 2 ways that you could access your package. You could come to the Eastlink Center at a scheduled time to pick it up, or we also offered people curbside delivery. In engineering services, we've posted tenders for our catch basin and manhole replacement program for the Swanhaven area, bridge repair and maintenance, traffic signal inspection program, retaining wall replacement design build in Pinnacle, and our rain and storm flow monitoring program. As well, we've started our asphalt and concrete crushing program that it provides materials that we use in other city projects. Inspection services is nearing the end of our hospital project. We're currently doing pre-final inspections are scheduled to start this month over the next few days. And will continue into mid-June, and we're expecting that the final approvals for the entire building and the parking garage will be done somewhere near the end of June, which will allow the project to be turned over to HS. In transportation, currently managing a few drainage issues around the community, but they worked the entire weekend to get ahead of some of that, so we're in relatively good shape on drainage. Road bans have been instituted. Our sweeping program is looking like it's going to start on Monday, as well as our boulevard cleaning. We're currently monitoring the Bear Creek reservoir levels for the snow melts, and currently we have no concerns over that water course. Spring cleanup is going to start over the next couple weeks, and we currently have pothole crews running 24/7, and we're looking to add some more resources to that so we can get even more done, as it's a particularly challenging spring on the pothole front. And that's my report.
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Thiessen, and then Mayor Given, and then Councillor Palat.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bressie. I have a couple questions, but I think I'll just start with a comment. On the GP Grows, it was a phenomenal success. I just want to comment, I think there was members, kind of like a complex projects team from 9 different departments that were working to put this together. Fully subscribed in about 6 hours. And I think the scheduled pickup is this Friday for the ones that have registered. I think there's 500 registration, and deliveries are going out next week. In talking with Michelle Gardner from Environmental Stewardship, originally the plan was maybe to employ Turbo, I suggested perhaps members of council, myself included, would be willing to help with the deliveries, to save on some of the costs and, get out and about and get out of our house and stuff like that. I think it could be very helpful. But just want to commend the team from various departments for helping to put this together. And there's more to come. There's a phase 2 as well as a phase 3 talking about orchards and stuff like that. So stay tuned. Thanks, Dylan. Great.
Mayor Given.
Yeah, Brian, so I had two questions. First, on the GP Grows, what was the budgeted amount for that, or what was the cost of that program? I've mentioned the program to other mayors in some of our mid-sized city calls. They've been really interested in the program, and so I was curious they've been asking me what the cost was.
I have to get the exact cost, but it was relatively low. I want to say under $5,000, but I can send that out to council after.
That'd be great. And then, Chair Bressie, my other question was, in terms of the capital projects that you mentioned, Director Glavin, are those going to be updated to our capital projects portion on the website? We used to have an interactive map where people could see all the projects that are undergoing for the year. Has that been updated regularly? If I was to go and check it, would I be able to see some of these projects and the other ones that administration has in the hopper?
Yes, you should still be able to see all of our projects that are either have been tendered, will be tendered on the Grande Prairie Traffic Planner app that's on our website.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. A couple questions for you, Brian. Just wondering if you can give me an idea. I know there was chat at one point about the city looking at running evening crews year-round instead of just kind of seasonal. I'm just wondering if there's been conversation about us looking at keeping evening crews moving forward through the spring to do street sweeping and pothole repairs and stuff like that at night.
Yeah, so currently we do have crews running 24/7, and we have them likely scheduled into June, but we are actively considering putting a night crew on for a longer period of time. It may not be the entire summer, as there may not be need for the entire summer, but we may extend it beyond June that we currently have planned.
Okay, great, thanks. And my other one, just kind of around the capital projects as well, is getting a little bit sensitive, but I'm just wondering, downtown phase 4, if there's any chance that could be happening this year, and if that's a conversation council should have. I know for me, I'm in support of moving forward with this. Maybe not as supportive for next year if this comes out, because I'm really concerned about shutting down the street after these businesses have been shut down for most of the summer. I don't know if I can consciously shut it down next year. So I'm just wondering if you can update me if that's going to be a council conversation, or if that we made that motion already and that's where it stands, and I guess we talked about this in the fall, whether we're going ahead in 2021 or not.
Sure, Councillor Bressie, from the administration's perspective, it's currently planned for 2021, but to give you a rough idea of what the timelines look like, should council want to consider it under an ideal circumstance, from the time that we decided to go ahead, it would be about 6 weeks to complete the tender process. So that would include advertising and award of the tender. And then it would be, probably in an ideal scenario, up to 4 weeks for the winning contractor to mobilize. It could be a little bit quicker than 4 weeks, but it all depends on what the supply chain looks like, because they can start ripping things up, but they also need to make sure they have a supply of the materials they need to go back into the ground. So they likely wouldn't start ripping things up until they knew that they had secure supply for the materials they need. So when you start looking at it, we're probably talking, if we gave the go-ahead today, it would be mid to end of June optimistically before they'd be able to start, which would probably put it into a 2-year program where we would have to do part of it this year and part of it next year. If you were looking at, this would be just, I'm not going to call it a wild guess, but an educated guess would be they would be able to get the underground utilities and road surface done this year, but we'd likely have to do temporary surfaces for the sidewalks, and we wouldn't be able to install the street furniture or the landscaping until the following year.
Okay. So I guess for me, and I appreciate that update, and so it doesn't sound as feasible as I once thought. I'm wondering if there's going to be a conversation with council on that capital project before, or if there's anything else we can do that I guess I feel like my opinion's changed, and I'm not sure if I'm the only one on council, but I feel my opinion's changed on whether I can confidently going ahead with this in 2021 or not now with what's happened with COVID. So I'll leave it at that, and then I appreciate the answers, Director Webb.
Okay, well, I saw Councillors O'Toole and Clayton want to get in, and I'll let them ask some questions, and Councillor Friesen before I get around on the loop again. So Councillor O'Toole, then it'll be Clayton, then Friesen.
Yeah, Brian, Glavin, I was just wondering if you could give us some kind of an idea of the amount of potholes that need to be filled and the potholes that have been filled so far. I know there's a lot, but can you give us a perspective on a number?
Yeah, that is information that I can certainly get to you. I'm not sure if Robert's watching here. I doubt he is. Would an email suffice for that?
Yeah,
I can get that information here today for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Hey, Councillor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. On the same vein, to Director Glavin, I'm wondering if it's possible, and maybe this is a question for Director Bork, but it's not the easiest feature to find on our website in the C-Click Fix. So for those who are watching that don't know about C-Click Fix, it's an opportunity for you to report various things, including pothole repairs. It's a great feature on our website. Once you find it, it shows pictures of work that currently is being identified, etc. But right now, even if you search, you have to search C-Click Fix with no spaces, and then you go into road maintenance, and then you go into potholes, and then you scroll down. And so I love the feature. I just don't think it's as accessible as it could be. So I'm wondering if you could consider having that sort of brought to an easier place for people to see, because I think it's a great feature, and I just think it's probably, it's not as user-friendly as it could be. Thanks.
Okay, I think between Director Burke and myself, we can likely come up with a way to make it a little bit more accessible, but Shane might have a little bit more on that as well.
Chair Bressie, it is called Report Issues Online. It is on the main toolbar on the city menu. But Brian and I will take a look at this and see if there's a better way to promote this, particularly in the spring session here.
Great, thank you. Because it's, you know, as with many years, we hear about pothole repairs. We know spring has come, and then sometimes it's dandelions, and then it's snow removal. So we know spring has arrived, but I just think it's a great feature that could be utilized a little better. Thanks.
Councillor Friesen.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. Director Glavin, can you just refresh my memory? When we were last really watching the reservoir and the spillway and that infrastructure, was that during the unusual amounts of rain in the summer, or was that at a spring melt?
So that was 2018, and that's when we had a very quick melt, where we went from having fairly low temperatures with a fairly significant snowpack to having double-digit into 20-degree temperatures that caused the snow to melt at a rapid rate.
Right, okay. And is there any indication, do we have that much snow? Like how imminent would a concern be this year? And I recognize that you're watching it and have great faith that you are looking for the things you need to look for, but what's the likelihood, I guess, relative to what that concern was?
Quite low that we're going to have an issue this year. We have a few things going for us. One, we have a dramatically better monitoring system in place than we did in 2018. So there's a lot more safeguards and early warning signals that we'll get, and it's just much more in our consciousness than it ever has been. As well, we're kind of lucky with the way that spring's going right now that we're getting, you know, low to mid single-digit temperatures during the day, and then it freezes again at night, which slows the rate of water that's going into the Bear Creek lake as well as into the Bear Creek itself. So those things are in our favor right now, and we have people that are actively monitoring this, and I'm not currently concerned that we're going to have any issues on that front.
That's great. Thanks, Director Glavin. Thanks, Councillor Bear.
Councillor Minhas. Councillor Minhas, you're muted, just so you know.
Thank you, Councillor Bressie. And Brian, I got a question. are we looking after those culverts? Because I've seen in the county side, I was driving yesterday or the day before, some of the culverts are blocked with the ice and water can't get through. Like the bigger lots of land now, would do be somebody looking after those things to be opened up?
Yeah, as far as our culverts and catch basins, right now they spent the weekend working on historically problem areas that we know every year we have issues with, as well as going after any of the ones that we were getting citizen complaints on. So right now we're not aware of any significant ones that we're not on top of, but we do encourage, kind of to Jackie's point or Councillor Clayton's point, to utilize C-Click-Fix and make sure that if you do see something in your neighborhood that's not functioning properly, that it gets reported.
A question I've got is just with this really late spring we're having, is there all of our road rehab projects, is there anything that's been pushed back yet, or are we still on schedule for everything we're hoping to get done this year?
Right now, we're still on schedule. The asphalt plants typically don't open up until around May 15th, so we're still about a month out before major road projects would start. So right now, we don't have any indications from contractors that we're going to see delays yet. So right now, we're still optimistic that we're going to be able to run a full capital program this year.
Great. We'll hope for good weather sooner rather than later. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Chair Bressy. Brian, my question actually was in regards to the downtown project. Councillor Platt asked that, and I had shared the same concerns. But part of my question still remains unanswered. That was in regards to the province's announcement of additional funding for shovel-ready projects on capital construction. Have we looked into that at all? And I know we were nearing capacity when we were at budget for what we could do, what we thought we could do locally. But is there any additional projects that we might be able to tap into to help employ people in the community?
Thank you, Chair Bressy. So right now, we're not aware of funding that the municipality itself can access to do more municipal projects, although we're of the understanding that it's likely that there is some to come in the future. But right now, I believe that the infrastructure announced was for provincial roadways.
Okay. And so nothing's coming towards the municipalities?
Not that I'm currently aware of, but I believe that there is some on the way.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mayor Given might have something to...
Well, Councillor Thiessen, so the Premier and ministers have repeatedly said that there will be some kind of program coming to encourage municipal infrastructure. They've asked for submission of projects, and I know administration has done some work on identifying potential projects, but they haven't actually announced any money, they haven't announced any program, they haven't announced any details, and so the government has repeatedly said that there will be something to encourage municipalities to undertake more work, to put people back to work, but at this stage it's pretty loose in terms of detail, or undefined, I guess. And our administration has done their work to be prepared, and I'm sure Brian can speak a little bit to that, but so they're well prepared to be able to put something in, and then we just need to take it forward to the province. But, you know, they haven't sort of set up, so it's going to be really informal. We'll work through our MLAs through the minister's office, but there's no program to apply to yet.
Okay. I guess follow up to that question, and this is for Brian. Thanks for that, Bill. If there is a funding program announced for capital projects, would administration consider downtown phase 4 and 4A as part of that funding package of the shovel-ready project?
So as far as phase 4 goes, I think we've already discussed kind of the logistical challenges that we're going to have, but would we exclude it from projects that we would consider for additional funding? No, I think we would look through all the projects throughout our entire funding envelope on how we would manage the flow of projects and how we would fund them.
Okay, thank you.
I see our city manager trying to get in, so City Manager Galante.
Okay, thank you, Chair Bressy. Just in addition to the information provided by Brian, I can say that we are pretty much finishing the compilation of projects in addition to the capital plan approved for 2020, that is about $25 million, the 2020 approved capital plan. So in addition to that, we have about $38 million in additional expedited capital projects if we receive funding from the province. So when you consider the downtown phase 4 and 4A, the total amount is about $59 million, and without that, because of the logistical challenges that Brian mentioned briefly, then the remaining amount is about $38 million that could be executed during 2020, in the summer, in the fall, even winter transition into 2021. So we have a list of projects that is pretty much at 95% right now, and can be submitted to the province at any moment during this week. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Horacio. It gives me great confidence.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Director Glavin.
Thank you, Chair Bressi. And just an answer to one of the questions earlier on GP Grows, about $5,000 for phase 1.
Wow, that seems like a lot of value for that money. Couple bucks a family, that's great. Any other questions from council? All right, well, with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our outstanding items list, and I think that's still you, Director Glavin.
Yes, thanks, Chair Bressi. So we did present 1067 at the last committee, so that can come off the agenda. 1063 just got added to this outstanding items list, although it was directed by council back in December. For whatever reason, it didn't make it onto a list, so that work will come likely at the next committee meeting. We'll be able to give a brief update on where we are with that level. Our business licensing coordinator is going to reach out and try and get that information for us now.
Great. Well, could I have a motion for committee to accept it as changed? Councillor Thiessen.
So moved, Chair Bressi.
Great. All in favor? And with that, this meeting is adjourned, and I will hand it over to Councillor Friesen, who chairs our Community Services Committee.
Thank you very much. So for those of you at home watching, this is, we're again, as Councillor Bressi mentioned early on, we moved forward through our committees this morning, and I'm chairing this committee, which is Community Services. So we're going to, and members are Councillor Clayton and Blatt and Mayor Gibbon. So let's start with Director's Area Update. Director Miller.
Great, thanks Chair Friesen, and good morning Council. So I'll start with the CKC campus. So right now we're doing super cleaning is what Angela Redding calls it. So permanent staff are busy stripping, resealing floors in the lobbies, the meeting rooms, in the gathering areas, as well as replacing the puckboard in the arenas. We have modified hours in effect for both the Collision Reporting Center and La Valley Physiotherapy, and all other remaining on-site programs are still under suspension. Strategic Marketing launched the Eastlink Center social media contest for residents to stay connected to the facility by submitting their at-home workout station or creative workouts via photos or videos. So it's a lot of creative fitness happening in the community, trying to encourage folks to stay healthy during this time. With events and entertainment, I think the city manager mentioned this previously about Tunes at 2. So it's a program that they started, it's a social media campaign, and it features some local artists as well as artists that have played in the venue in the past. And it's going over very well. We've had over 200,000 views, and it's growing every day, so that's a very good initiative. And then the Day Bar Community Center is being used by 43 vulnerable residents. It's run through Northreach with our staff providing support as well, so it's going very well. Very, I think, exceptionally well is what I've heard. So good kudos to Northreach and to our staff as well. And then with facilities, they're busy working at Eastlink. We're trying to accomplish as many of the aquatics fall shutdown tasks during this period. So then in the fall, we'll still have to shut down for a little bit of time, but it'll be a reduced amount of time. So that'll provide better service in the fall. hopefully we're reopened by the fall time. And then we're also with facilities are evaluating tender submissions in preparation for the spring and the summer building demolition project, which is the old school district building. And then they're also working on awarding general contractor services standing offer agreements to 3 local contractors. And what that'll do is it'll speed up our productivity time. We can just go to those contractors, so it'll be improved levels of service and availability. With fleet, we adjusted the hours of operation recently in consultation with the clients that we do serve, so transportation and parks, talking to what would still work for them, but the rationale behind it was to encourage employee and workspace separation, just to keep our employees safe and healthy. And in regards to the street sweepers, we have 3 ready to go, plus our conveyor sweepers ready to go. And the 4th sweeper, within the next couple of weeks, we're just waiting some parts, and there was some delay in receiving the necessary parts. And then mowing and road repair equipment is well underway for the maintenance of that equipment. With sports development, wellness, and culture, they're working on they call it an online fine arts program in collaboration. It's between the City of GP, the Art Gallery, and the Center of Creative Arts as well. So it's to encourage the community to make art as a form, and it'll be, what we're planning on doing is supporting both the Art Gallery and the Center for Creative Arts through online programming and promoting it on the city website and social media platforms, and then also exploring program partnership opportunities. And then switching over to transit, we did implement our service adjustments effective yesterday. And so the frequency is reduced to 60 minutes during the day, all day long, and service ends 1 hour earlier on weekdays and 2 hours earlier on Saturdays. We're also implementing an on-demand hybrid model and it'll be focused on essential trips during the evenings when we've reduced our level of service. So we'll pick up that extra hour through on-demand, and it'll still be our staff with our buses. You have to phone in advance to book the time, and it'll be bus stop to bus stop. It won't be like a house-to-house type service, but again, it's for essential trips, and that the rationale there is to encourage the social distancing and stay home when possible. And then Mr. Harvard's also working with procurement to explore options for software, which would enhance our on-demand service for the future. So it's something we think we will try to carry on with in the future as well, which will be more effective, more cost-effective, and we think a better level of service when the demand is low. It's done elsewhere. It's done back in Ontario, and plus Cochrane, Alberta, was also doing an on-demand service. So, and that's my update, unless there's any questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Miller. Are there any questions for Director? Scrolling through, I don't think I'm seeing any. I have a couple. Director Miller, for the essential on-demand service in evenings for transit, how has that been communicated to the ridership?
I believe it's on our website, and it was one of the service updates as well on the website.
Great, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the Art Gallery and the Center for Creative Arts put together that we can help to promote. Our internal programs, like the afternoon music and what was the other one you talked about? Anyway, are those also promoted on our website? I've seen them on social media, but excellent.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Yeah.
Great. So any questions for Director Miller? Great. Let me quickly back to our next agenda item, which I think was then just to the outstanding items list. Please, Director Miller again.
All right, thanks, Madam Chair. So 1076, the special lighting, Mr. Phillips is working on that, and we're still anticipating presenting that in 2 weeks' time, and he has a couple options, and he's explored low cost and then some with more cost, so he'll present that to committee in 2 weeks' time. 1069, the South Peace Archives report. We're still awaiting a little bit more information on that, so I'm hoping to change the date from that one from next committee to May 12th instead. And then we have a good option to present, and I also wanted to say thank you to Councillor Palat for helping us move this one forward, but I think it's a good solution, and that we'll present as a recommendation to Council. And then with the community group funding, 1070 and 1071, we are actively working on that. And 1071, initially we thought we'd present that in mid-August, but we'll be able to move that forward. Probably our hope is to present both the policy and recommendations to committee in June. So, and then have a decision before summertime. So, unless there's any questions, those are my comments, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Director Miller. And any questions? All right, and with that then, I'm looking for a motion to accept the outstanding items list. That's Councillor Clayton. All in favor? Great, thank you. And with that, we will close the meeting. Thank you. And who am I passing to now? I think is it Councillor Platt?
No, that's me.
Oh, okay, Councillor Minhas.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think it's 9:35 almost. We're starting a Cooperative Service Committee meeting agenda today. Like Friesen and Dylan said, we are me and the Councillor Friesen and Kevin O'Toole and our Mayor Bill Given, part of this committee. And the first item is 101 is the Director of Service Update, Shane Brook. Can you come up, please?
Thanks, Councillor Minhas. The corporate services are, in addition to helping out with the GPREP activities, assessment and taxation had an initial deadline of April 13th for assessment complaints. The province issued some new ministerial orders which pushed those deadlines to October 1st. So we're just having discussions with the province right now what that means for municipalities who advertised in advance of the ministerial order. So we'll have some more news as those discussions continue. Finance are just finalizing the consolidated financial statements for 2019, and that is scheduled to come forward at the April 28th committee meeting. The March month end will be in the May 12th meeting. IT are continuing with their regular work, which is focused on reducing the number of software programs that the city uses. And there's a couple that will be off the tally here soon. I'll update that at a future meeting. We're also just getting ready for the new satellite imagery for the GIS and mapping, which will, as soon as the snow melts, so hopefully by the end of April, we'll have a new satellite photo up for our mapping activities. From strategic marketing, we're just at the point now where we would normally be preparing the upcoming Community Connections magazine. With the cancellation of so many programs and closure of our events and the rollout of Perfect Mind, which is our new software system, we had been contemplating moving to a fully online version of this through Perfect Mind. It gives real-time updates on what programs are available. One of the challenges with Community Connections with the 3-month lead time was that basically as soon as we hit print, it was already stale dated as changes were made. So at this time, administration are recommending that we stop production of the Community Connections magazine and launch a campaign to promote our online new Perfect Mind access points. Customers and residents will be able to book through Perfect Mind, but also call some of our customer service agents to discuss what programs are available in the city and then to book programming. The Community Connections runs a net loss for us, even if we don't include staff time. So just production costs more than the advertising revenue that we have in it. We think this is an opportune time to move forward with an online digital platform for Community Connections. And with that, I take any questions.
So anybody had any question on Shane's statement? I don't see nobody. Okay, Dylan, go ahead. Dylan?
Oh, sorry. A question I've got is I'm trying to get my head around how much COVID-19 is costing the city in terms of we've lost revenue, we've also had expanded costs. I wonder if there's a plan to bring a report to council at some point on the financial impacts of our current issues.
That'll start to show up as we start to see the quarterly reports. That's currently our plan, is where you'll see that. So even that in the March report, which comes in May, Finance though are tracking some specific COVID costs, including our cost of GPREP and just some other ones. So we would be able to bring forward a report. I think that would be a likely time as to when we do quarterly reporting.
So I guess just a comment on that is I'm hoping that we get, even if it's not a formal written report, I'd find it very useful to get at least an order of magnitude and idea of what it is, at least a couple weeks before we debate our property tax bylaw, where it's going to be hard for me to vote on a property tax bylaw if I don't know what impact this is having on our 2020 year.
Okay, we'll look at what we can do. Some of this is there's so many unknown variables that we're doing our best guess. We can make projections based on some of the other downturns. We can look at what tax default rates and things were in those times. But this truly is an unprecedented event. So for all of our projections, I have to say that a lot of it is a shot in the dark here. But we're still comfortable with the line of credit that was approved last week. That we're in a positive cash flow scenario. But I'll see what information we can pull together before I note it.
Great, thank you.
Any other question? If it's not, do we need to receive the information?
I see a few more questions there, Chairman Haas.
Oh, I didn't see anybody. Okay, who is on next?
Councillor Minhas, Clyde here. I have just a question for Director Burke about community connections. And the first thought that came to mind for me is folks in seniors' homes. And I know that they may not be after many of the programs that are listed in there, but it is something that I know that if they're distributed to the seniors' homes, it may be the only access they have to that kind of information. Have you given any thought to what it is we would provide to people who aren't regular users of the internet for some of this information?
Chairman Haas, we have, and our goal is to have these programs filled, so we'll have a fairly quick sense of whether we're reaching the regular audiences for these. If we do find areas that we are missing, we have discussed a model where we could do some one-off quick sheets of information for those specific programs for specific target audiences, and really the test will be, are our programs filling up? Is what we've determined to be our plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. So any other question? Okay, well, Mayor Given, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Chairman Haas. So on community connections as well, Director Bork, will the sort of online version and the using Perfect Mind, will it also allow external parties to book their programs through there? One of the benefits that I'd always found as I've been using it to try to find programs for my kids was that it had not just city programs, but a range of programs from other organizations that allowed me to look at what was available for summer programming across the community, knowing that I'm sure there's others that were missed or, but yeah, so how will the online system handle external parties, or was it going to be focused only on internal city parties or city events?
I'm really not as familiar with the Perfect Mind system, but I don't believe our intent was to book for external. We were just referring to the advertising that was in the magazine.
Yeah, so I guess that's something that I would just like to flag for administration's consideration. I think the value that Connections provided to the community was that it was sort of a one-stop resource, or pretty close to a one-stop resource, where you can pick it up and say, okay, what are things to do for the kids over the spring break? what are things to do for the kids, what are all the different summer camps that are available in the community in one place. If the new system only provides the city registered programs, then it will make the job a lot harder for parents to find, it just adds a few extra hours of scouring the web, and eliminates the opportunity for somebody to stumble upon a programming option that they might not have considered if it only lists the city programs. Because I might have to know to go and search the Dinosaur Museum website, search the Nighthawk website, search the Gym Mix website, search and before those are all captured in connections. So I appreciate the opportunity to use digital. I appreciate the chance to potentially save some costs, but I think that the program actually provided a significant value to the community by being able to collect all those resources in one spot. So just, I don't know if you can speak to that right now, or just maybe start to think about that a little bit.
Chair Minhas, and that's why we brought it here, was to get this feedback before it was a final one and done closer. I think that's really good feedback, and I think we could come up with something where we could provide a place for community organizations to highlight some of their summer programming. So let me take that away, and I think though we could bring something forward that would meet that need. Good feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Is anybody else on the queue?
Councillor Clayton is?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Chairman Hess. To Director Burke, echoing the mayor's comments, I think last term we initiated the publication to be online in addition to printing. And I think that the online, the way that it is currently, is great. You can see the actual imagery of the book as it looks. And so to create that into a usable online tool, I think will be the next great step. And it was similar comments in to the outside advertising, as well as access to online groups. So I'm hopeful that, whether you click on an ad and it takes you to that user group or whatever that may be, if it simply takes you to their website, whatever that looks like, I think it's important for us to be able to access not only the traditional advertisers, but the advertisers that are actual user groups providing services. So I do share your concerns, Councillor Blackburn, with the groups that are currently using it and only want to use it in a paper format. I'm just optimistic that organizations that work with the user groups that want the paper format will be able to assist them in the use of it as an online tool. It's really, I think these savings will be substantial over time. I don't know how many city venues I go to, and there's piles and piles of them. And when my kids were younger, I'd always go to a venue to find one, and they seemed they were always out of them. Over the last few years, I go to venues and there's piles and piles of them sitting around. So I think more and more people are using it online every day. And so I think in the times that we are now, people are getting more used to using more things online. So I think the online usage will only increase, and it's only a matter of time where we don't even miss the fact that it comes in a paper format. So I appreciate this initiative and look forward to seeing how it's utilized. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So anybody else on the queue? Thank you, Jackie. Nobody in, so.
Yeah, Councillor Minhas, it's Kevin O'Toole here calling. I also want to reflect on the opportunity for like the Brownies, the Cub Scouts, the Air Cadets, the Sea Cadets, the Army Cadets. Those are the biggest places where they can advertise and promote their groups. So I'd like to see those incorporated onto the website as well. And those just to name a few, like Mayor Given had suggested Nighthawk. They got day bike riding, BMX, and all that other stuff that the residents of Grande Prairie and surrounding area would like to be able to find more information about those and register and know the fees, the dates, and all that kind of good stuff. So I would not like to lose that. I'd like to make sure that that's captured in whatever we have, and so it's a one-shop stop still.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin O'Toole.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the queue I don't see? Oh, now I can see Jackie. If not, do we need the motion to receive the information, or we're okay?
I think it's just a verbal report.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much. And then we move into 1.2. This is Bylaw C-1422, establishment of the business of the board and the committees. So, Arlene.
Good morning, Chairman Minhas and committee. Last October, administration presented a report along with the boards and committees framework to the Corporate Services Committee. And as a result of that presentation, Council directed administration to implement changes to modernize the city's approach to boards and committees. The bylaw before you today is a result of a collaborative effort between several city departments to establish a consistent structure, including reporting requirements for the city's boards and committees. The proposed bylaw doesn't replace existing mandates for entities such as the Center 2000 Board of Directors, which was established in 1999 by Articles of Association, or the Grande Prairie Airport Commission, which was also established by Articles of Association as amended in 2003. The bylaw also references our current procedure bylaw as the authority for the establishment of council standing committees, and their powers contained are within that document. Some of the key changes within this bylaw include the dissolution of the Arts Development Committee and the Pursuit of Excellence Committee, which was a recommendation outlined in the boards and committees framework, recommendation number 13. These committees require a significant amount of staff, council, and public participation to approve funding, to the point where cost to administer is challenging to justify the benefit to the community. A proposed option would be to develop council-approved guidelines to administer that funding, similar to the corporate sponsorship program that currently exists. Another option would be to utilize one of the current existing committees, such as the Community Advisory Committee. The bylaw also establishes council's participation on external committees outlined in Schedule B. And it provides for an annual review of this bylaw to ensure it continues to support the strategic priorities of council and the priorities of the community. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Oh, anybody question for Arlene?
Chair Minhas, Councillor Thiessen here. Ms. Karbaczewski, in the very beginning of the report, the recommendation had two amendments to include Youth Council and Intercity Forum on Social Policy into this bylaw. I didn't happen to see the Intercity Forum on Social Policy recognized in the actual bylaw. Is that an omission on purpose or just overlooked?
Arlene?
Oh, my apologies. Thank you for your question, Councillor Thiessen. My intent was to include the Intercity Forum on Social Policy as an external committee listed in Schedule B of this bylaw.
Okay. And actually, thank you for that, Ms. Karbaczewski. Just in regards to Schedule B, I did notice a lot of omissions, and I'm trying to remember all the recommendations back in October, just off the top of my head. But there are some significant ones that I noticed. Peace Library Systems. We have an actual agreement with that organization. It would take us a year to get out of it if we're not appointing members to that committee, as well as since it's an external. Grand Spirit Foundation as well was a big omission, considering they work on housing, and we appoint members of council to help advise that, and council's definitely placed a priority on that. For me personally, Mighty Peace Watershed Alliance, I'm not sure what our plan is to be involved with that moving forward, but I think it's important for the environment. And then finally, Nighthawk. I don't see it on here, but as a council priority, we have the Grande Prairie Storm Hockey Board of Directors, and we don't represent Nighthawk. And we contribute significantly to the capital and operations of Nighthawk. So I guess, are we just not going to be involved with these groups anymore, or?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Thiessen. Based on the framework, the boards and committees framework, that was presented back in October, there was discussion held around council's participation on some of the entities that you've referenced. And of course, it's at council's discretion whether or not to continue participation on those selected. And if it's this committee's desire to direct administration to include those into this bylaw, that's something that we can do.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Karbaczewski. I actually don't have a vote on this, so I would encourage members of the committee to at least consider the organizations that we talked about, and I'll see if there's any other people who might have questions too. Thanks so much, Arlene.
You're welcome.
So anybody on the queue? I don't see what I got. Four guys.
This is Dylan, Councillor Bressie. I've got a couple questions.
Go ahead.
One I've got is, well, more a comment, but an amendment we might consider in the actual bylaw is looking at item 3.6.2. It talks about council representatives are entitled to vote on appointed committees unless otherwise noted. I wonder if it might be worth putting explicitly that their alternates are also allowed to vote, where I know that's, when I've been an alternate for council members, sometimes that's been a question is, am I just here to listen and talk, or do I actually get a vote if I'm representing council here? And that might be worth putting explicit in the bylaw that unless there's an article of incorporation or some reason that can't happen, that by default the alternate gets to vote. A few other things I see is echoing Councillor Thiessen's. I don't know if this gets to council, I don't know if I can support Schedule B on this. There's a few committees that I could see councils getting off on, but I don't know if, I think we might be cutting back too far the ones that councils are involved in. So I'd love us to have some discussion about that. I'll leave it at there, but I've got a few comments about a few specific committees that I'll probably come back to, but I'll leave it with those two comments for now and let others get in.
Right, Cabinet Tool?
Yeah, I also got some concerns about Schedule B too. I don't see our francophone, francophile committee there as well, a representative for that national board and international board. The city mandated a long time ago that we would be supportive of this, and I don't see it here. So that sort of bothers me a little tiny bit. Also, I was wondering, when it come to deciding of shutting down the two boards, Arts Development and the Pursuit of Excellence, if there was an opportunity for a council member to help review administration, as we seem to be losing a little bit of touch with the community on some of these hands-on boards. I do agree that there's a lot of expense there, and when we meet, there's a lot of work involved, but this would allow to have council participation still without having a number of community members and that sort of stuff. So was that ever a conversation when making these decisions at this point?
Thank you. Through the chair. At the previous Corporate Services Committee meeting where the boards and committees framework was presented, these were presented as options. for council and committee to discuss. And once again, we were just acting on the direction of council moving forward. Of course, this is your opportunity to direct administration to pursue other options, and we're open to any suggestions.
Councillor Plot here, just if I can jump in, Councillor Minhas. I've got similar concerns, and mine are, some of them are about, we've had some good conversation about what community group funding can look like, and maybe are we using Pursuit of Excellence and Arts Development as avenues to promote funding through those channels instead of having other organization. And so for me, I'm struggling a little bit with this because I actually think the potential of Pursuit and Arts Development could be even bigger and have more purpose, and maybe be a little bit more aligned with how we could redo the community group funding. So I appreciate that we got to the conversation we've been wanting to have for quite a while. I just wanted it present for, with how it's laid out as well. The concerns in Schedule B I also have, but specifically around Arts Development and Pursuit of Excellence, I'd like to have a little bit more clarification about those two. And I think the conversation we're going to have around community group funding ties into this a little bit. So for me, I would kind of think that those need to go together for me to approve this one. More of a comment, just where my thoughts are at, but I appreciate the report.
Thank you. Wait, anybody else on the queue?
Yes, Councillor Minhas, if I may. First of all, just regarding Schedule B, one of the things that I noticed about it that might be part of our consideration is that on committees like the Grand Spirit Foundation, we are one of many municipalities that are represented at that table. And we are, because we are the largest community within it, we have some special roles to play in terms of executive committee and so on. I can't see us not being a part of that committee. The other thing that I wanted to ask about is, well, two more things. One is, I'm trying to find it now, and of course, when I need to, I can't. But I'm sure I read somewhere that appointments to committees would be for a single-year term, and I thought that we had a practice of having our committee appointments for longer periods than that. So I question whether or not that's a change that needs to be made. And coming back to committees like Arts Development and the Pursuit of Excellence Committee, and even the Community Enhancement Committee, I think that the community values the involvement that they have in those committees. So I'm not sure what the costs are and how much we might save by not having those committees operating. But I think we need to take into account the value that those committees have on a social level. And I wonder, with the dissolution of the Community Enhancement Committee, whether or not we're also losing the utility box RAP program, which takes a fair chunk of time in terms of accepting and reviewing and voting on the RAPs. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the queue? If it's not, then
yeah. So, Councillor Minhas, I think most of us are trying to show you our hands when we sort of put our hands up like we do in the room. So I don't know if you can see me right now, but I've got my hand up, and others were also doing the same.
I can see you now. I've got only 4 or 5 people see on the mic.
So there you go. So you may, yeah, there's a little setting that you can do so you can see sort of all the people that have video on. And so you can kind of make that a little bit bigger, make it easier for you as chair. I had a few things that I just wanted to highlight of suggested, well, things that I think would be important. And I'm happy to run through them sort of through the list. Councillor Bressy probably had a few. He stopped at 1. Somebody probably has more. Yeah. But if it's okay, I would like to go through and sort of flag those for administration and the committee. So 2.3, the talks about how often the terms of reference or bylaw will be reviewed. It suggests on an annual basis. I think that, so if I read this by the letter of the law, it would say that every committee's terms of reference or bylaw would be reviewed every year. I think that that's too much. My suggestion would be that it should be once a council term, or a minimum of once a council term. If a council felt the need to review it more often, then fine, they'd have that authority. But so my suggestion would be shall be reviewed on a minimum of every 4 years following a municipal election. So the point being that after new council is elected, they do a review of these things, see if it fits what they wanted to do. So that would be one under that 2.3. Under 2.5, and I'll see what my council colleagues think about this, but it says council may establish by resolution a task force. I would like to carve out some space for the mayor, the position of mayor, to launch a task force if needed. I think that that's, you know, I think that there should be some room for that. And so I could see either that being council on recommendation of the mayor, so that the mayor recommends the council to establish. So, you know, it could be, you know, so council members could raise an idea, and if accepted by the mayor, then it's referred to council and voted on by council, or the mayor independently could recommend to council the establishment of a task force. Ultimately, it would mean that council would have the ability to approve it, but I just think that the way that it's set out here just isn't. I just think that there needs to be that ability from time to time for the mayor to establish a task force for a special purpose. But I don't have a problem if it's up to council to approve it. Some other mayor in the future may want to have the ability to strike task force or something on their own. Yeah, just carving a little bit of space for the mayor to make that recommendation. I had a question about 2.8. It says a task force shall report to the committee. But if council establishes a task force, it doesn't say what committee. So does that mean that so my suggestion on 2.8 would be a task force shall report to the committee, because committees in here can establish task force. But if council establishes a task force, then the task force should report to council, I would think. So a bit of an amendment there on 2.8 to say, unless established by council, then the task force shall report to council or something like that. Mm-hmm. 3.1, it says the mayor is ex officio member of all committees and can attend as a voting member if so desired. That, I think we need to have at least some sort of statement that fixes up how that works with all, like it's contradictory. Like I can't show up to assessment review board and vote. I can't show up to library board and vote. And so we need to make a clarifying statement somewhere in here, unless otherwise, unless not allowed. But there are a number of, especially the semi-judicial ones, I don't get to show up and vote as an ex officio. And so we need to clarify that. And for example, the library board bylaw doesn't allow the mayor as ex officio, I don't believe. So I think we need to tighten that up a little bit. And I think that was, I also had a question about 5.1.2, where it says the administrative, so this is under administrative support. 5.1.2 suggests specifically that administration assists the chair in developing meeting agendas. That isn't really our practice at the city, that chairs of committees develop agendas. Agendas are really sort of an output of the work of the organization or entity, and all members are welcome to put something on the agenda, but it's really the agenda is driven by the business of the organization rather than by the chair developing the agendas. So that one just stood out as a little bit of if we used other people as a reference, other communities as a reference, maybe they do that, but we haven't really had a practice of chair people of any committee setting an agenda. So I'm not sure that it's administration's role to support the chair in setting an agenda. And then finally, under 6.1, I was just really curious about 6.1.5, where it says the following committees are dissolved. And it says that Disabled Transportation Society, I don't think we have any authority to dissolve the Disabled Transportation Society. It's an independent organization, I think incorporated under the Societies Act. So I don't think we have the, I mean, I think it has been dissolved, but I don't think we get a chance, I don't think the city is at all in control of that. And so I don't think that I don't think it's appropriate to include it there. So that was my list, and I'm curious how many Councillor Bressi and I doubled up on.
So Dylan, you're the next one then?
Sure, I've got a couple. I think that Mayor Given covered all the ones in the actual bylaw that I wanted to cover, and we doubled up on a decent amount of those. But going to Schedule A, there's two particular committees there that I'd personally like to see some changes on, and one is the Community Knowledge Campus Advisory Committee. A few changes that I think personally are needed there is I'd like that committee to also be looking at one of the main reasons I want that committee is I'd like it to provide advice on the capital plan for the Eastlink Center, and I think that it would be worth putting that in the terms of reference, that it won't just look at growth opportunities, at sports events awareness, bid opportunities, but it will actually look at the capital plan of that facility as something I think would be worth putting in there. Look at that committee, I see that this says up to 7 public members. I wonder if that should be expanded to up to 12. There's a lot of user groups that use that campus, and I think we're going to have troubles capturing them all with 7 members. I also wonder if we want to go the direction of council appoints these members, or council selects the groups that can appoint their own representative. I honestly don't know which way is best there, but it's at least worth discussing. Do we want to appoint those members, or do we want to let the groups appoint them themselves? Last thing I'd say on that is the reporting requirements. One of the reasons why I want this advisory committee is to create more of a direct link between council and the groups that are using the Community Knowledge Campus. And so when it says reporting requirements are through the CKC General Manager, personally, I'd see more value having the chair of that committee report to council, or having council meet with that committee once a year. I don't know what it looks like, but I don't know if I want the administrative filter between us and that committee. I think that I'd personally rather us have direct interface with that committee, at least occasionally. So those are changes that I see that I'd personally like to see with that committee. The other one I'd highlight is the Youth Council. This lays out between the ages of 16 and 18 years. I know a lot of municipalities have expanded that into early 20s, whether it's 20, whether it's 22, whether it's 24. But I think that 16 to 18 might be too narrow of a slice in terms of you get a kid that's recruited when they're 17, 18, and they get a year on that, and then you lose them. And who's there to create some of that institutional knowledge? Who's there to teach those younger kids? I think it might be worth expanding the age groups there. And also, this says term 2-year staggered renewal. I wonder if it might be worth saying a 1 or 2-year term. Give us options, give kids options to apply. I know asking a 17-year-old kid who's going to their senior year of high school, hey, make a 2-year commitment. That's a lot to ask. That's a lot to ask of them. And so those are a few changes which I think might be worth making there.
All right. Kevin, your hand was up, or?
I got one, Chair Minhas. Just sort of to echo what Councillor Bressi said, I had it highlighted here too about the age groups. My experience with Youth Council is a large majority is between the ages 16 to 18, but a lot of the kids who got really involved in Youth Council and really found their groove started out at the age of 14 or 15. Just through association, through the high schools, grade 9 through 12. So if that's reflective and even expanded, as Councillor Bressi mentioned, I think we might have a bit more active youth in our community that might want to be engaged on Youth Council for a lot longer. So thanks for bringing that up, Dylan, and move from there. That's all I got.
That's all you got? Jackie, go ahead.
Thanks, Councillor Minhas. A few things. Youth Council, I echo the comments there. I know political parties allow youth members starting at 14, and I think that that's sort of an age that youth have an opportunity to be part of the conversation, and it would only encourage more of our active youth in our community that are interested in getting involved, to not have to wait. So I think that 14 is a great age for youth council. The Community Advisory Committee, dissolving that, I guess a question for Ms. Karpaszewski. I'm wondering, you know, that committee is really, truly an advisory committee. And I don't see an opportunity for other people that are interested in our community to be involved in conversations that are similar to the ones that happen in the advisory committee. So tell me the thought behind dissolving that committee.
Thank you, through the chair. The Community Enhancement Advisory Committee, as it originally exists, focused on more of a community enhancement style projects. The newly formed Community Advisory Committee is designed to incorporate the work of the Community Enhancement Advisory Committee and just include other authorities. Make that advisory committee be a little more interactive and reach a little bit further out into culture, art, community enhancement, and incorporate a broader range of participation.
Thank you. I had a couple other things, but I'll come back to them.
Okay, Eunice, your turn.
Thank you. I won't be long. Many of the things that I wanted to highlight are in there already. I'll just add to upping the upper age limit on the youth advisory committee. I think is, you know, if we do get youth in there who really have the gumption to become involved politically, or to go on to become involved politically, I think that's fantastic, and to allow them to remain on this advisory committee as they get into GPRC and life, I think is ideal. But the only new comment that I have to make would be on and I've lost it now on my little screen here, the complaint adjudication. The membership would be appointed, I think it was 3 members appointed by council. I just wonder if there's another way that we could have these members found. And the only reason, you know, the argument could be made that it's no different from us appointing those who would review our remuneration. But with remuneration review, that's a forward-looking review, such that, you know, maybe we don't get reelected, maybe we decide not to run again for the next council. However, with the complaint adjudication, that I just wonder if the allegation could be made that it's not a fair process because those members are appointed by council, and, you know, as we see, you know, I'll just leave it at that. I just wonder if that there could be another way of getting these members on that committee. I don't know.
Thank you. Through the chair, the process that we use with regard to appointing members to the Complaint Adjudication Committee is set out in the Bylaw, Council Code of Conduct Bylaw, and it's our mandate to follow that bylaw to address complaints that are brought forward on a council member or a member of council through that code. And it's fairly structured. It's designed to, although council does appoint the members themselves have the power to appoint independent resources, such as an investigator or an independent adjudicator, dependent on the type of complaint received by the committee. So it isn't designed to look biased by appointing members through council. It's the method that's used through the bylaw.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Karpaszewski.
I see Mayor Given has a question.
Sure. Well, and maybe just a process suggestion, because there are lots of hands. I think there's lots of, and people are, my observation is people are looking at this from a couple of different perspectives. Maybe we would want to either discuss or deal with the bylaw itself, parts, 1 through 7, which is sort of how the bylaw works and what our process is. And then we may want to deal separately with the schedules that say what committees we're going to be on and which ones we're not, because there's sort of at least two different parts of discussion here, and both important. Both, yeah, and there's a third one. Maybe I'm missing it, but both, and they're all important. There's not any need for us to do them all necessarily at the same time. We might want to take it. Okay, let's have a look at the bylaw itself. Let's address the schedules second, and then if there's a third part that I'm missing, but that just, there's sort of the technical, how does the bylaw work? And then there's the what committees do we want to be on? And then there's the how do those committees each work? And so that's the three parts. The bylaw, the what are we on, and then how do those individual things work? And it seems like we have questions across all three sort of areas right now. And that might make it difficult to get this completed today. So just a suggestion of, and so maybe we would want to, deal with this by making revisions to the bylaw, ask the administration to make those revisions and bring it back. I think it's probably important to do this well, and do it. We're going to do it probably once for our term, and have it all put together well, so the next council can pick it up and review and see if it fits their priorities. So there's not a rush to get this done this week, this meeting. If we had to say, okay, well, let's make some changes, have it come back, and then look at the next section, that might be an okay way to do it.
If I could thank the mayor for those comments, I agree. I've probably been more guilty than others for bouncing around all three sections of this. I'm not sure, Bill, in your list of sort of the bylaw things, I was trying to keep up with you, but did you talk about 5.1.6 at all? Anyways, I have it highlighted in mine, and I guess my only suggestion might be, because it's under administrative support, to develop an annual orientation for the committee to which they are assigned, sort of similar to what the mayor was saying on some of his other suggestions. Maybe this is just develop an orientation for committee members as they're appointed. I think that as it reads, it would mean that every year the committees would be getting an orientation, and I don't know if that's necessary. But just my 2 cents, and yeah, I agree with Bill. Maybe we should take this back, look at it in pieces, and then do it well.
I see Jackie Clayton's hand up.
I think
Ms. Karvashewski.
Okay, I mixed up then.
Through the chair, a question for Ms. Karvashewski. The current process with having council at committees such as arts development and pursuit of excellence involves making decisions on a bucket of money, and so with the process of, with the new advisory committee, looking for the proper title of it, I think that's Community Advisory Committee, and no council representation. At one point, the report addresses that by having fewer committees, it frees up administrative time to focus more time on these committees. And so if the process is similar, so the Community Advisory Committee is established, decisions are being made with taxpayer dollars at a Community Advisory Committee level on things such as recreation and cultural projects. That committee approves funding per se. Then I'm assuming administration brings back the report and presents it at a council meeting, unlike now where a council member brings that back for discussion and debate and voting on. So now this administration member brings this back. At that point, the perception or the actual action is that a council could defeat many recommendations that come from a purely advisory committee level. And so my question is through that whole process, are we more efficient? So now, so with the process you're suggesting, Community Advisory Committee, for example, votes on applications, let's just use arts development type applications, votes on the applications that come through, traditionally have come through arts development. Now this Community Advisory Committee votes on that. Those votes, recommendations as they are, because council still has to approve this, they're presented by administration, and because there's no council member there, administration is now more work to inform council of the decisions or discussions rather that the advisory committee makes. Now council has discussions on these. The administration person has to fill in council on the discussion and why the advisory committee is recommending this. And then in turn, council could defeat that. And so at some point, my concern will be council defeating motions that appointed committee members have made, and is that really more efficient?
Thank you. Through the chair, the intent of the Community Advisory Committee and the establishment of it was not initially to act as the funding avenue. The intent under framework recommendation number 13 was to examine the opportunity of utilizing a method or a process similar to the corporate sponsorship program, where through that program, administration administers applications for sponsorship, and there is a cap of $2,000 on specific individual applications. So it would be an administrative process. These types of sponsorship funding opportunities wouldn't then come through council for approval. They would come through, they could come through an advisory committee as a quarterly report or a monthly report that of the activity or of the actions of administration, as opposed to coming through as a request for council to make a decision.
Okay, and can you tell me where in the framework, what page item number 13 is? I don't see it.
So that was presented back in October. It was on a previous
Okay, thank you.
Agenda.
If I can, Councillor Min has one other comment.
Go ahead.
In the recommendation for external committees scheduled, sorry, Mayor, you said you want to discuss schedule items later?
No, that was just my suggestion, because we are, it's
all
a really big issue.
Yeah.
And so we're having a hard time. I think it'll be tough to get motions out of this because there's such a wide variety of things. So it's just a suggestion. Yeah, no, I guess maybe question for Director. What's the process you're hoping here today? Sort of, do you want to line by line have motions, amendments? I think that this discussion is is a good discussion, and maybe some of it should have happened in October, but there are, some concerns in schedules as well as the bylaw. So maybe Director can suggest the process you want to see for this document.
Thank you, Jeff.
Chairman Haas?
Yes.
Shane? Through the chair, that's why we brought this forward here at this early period. Our goal was, or our commitment was to have this in place and finalized by October, with the bylaw taking in effect beginning of next year. So this was intended to move this process forward from taking your direction from the framework, put it into a bylaw form so that we could have some of this discussion. There's no pressing need to move forward with this quickly. I think it was a good suggestion to take a piece of this. We also could take all of this not as motions, but as feedback and incorporate it into a revised version and bring it back at a future meeting so that we're actually looking at the draft. I think we have recorded all of these suggestions. So I would say if there's some quick suggestions we could take, we'll take that away and we'll bring this back at a future meeting. My recommendation.
I'll come back then with my other comments, Councillor Minhas.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Jackie.
Oh, okay, sorry. My other comment was in regards to Schedule B. The recommendation that council priority with the Grande Prairie Storm Hockey Board of Directors. The relationship with the storm currently and the city of Grande Prairie being, a financial relationship, I think is very important. However, with the suggestion of removing other sort of external organizations that are similar in concept, I don't see the Grande Prairie Storm Hockey Board of Directors being a committee that that council needs to be on. It's a weird fit in this group of sort of regional collaboration type, regional discussions, et cetera, and then to have one identified organization, I just don't see it. I do think that, obviously we have substantial financial commitment to the organization. I just, as Councillor Thiessen mentioned, we're not going to be on the Nighthawk Committee anymore. We've removed ourselves from other organizations such as Center 2000, and so that one kind of sticks out odd to me, and so therefore I don't know if it's necessary. Is my feedback.
I can respond to that one just very quickly, Councillor Minhas. I'm sorry for speaking out of turn, but I don't think you can see me waving. I'm just a little concerned about moving away from the Storm Hockey Board of Directors because of the major assistance that we've provided to them and the number of things that we said that we would hold them to in order for them to get through their financial difficulties. So I can see it as a priority for those reasons, even though if things were more normal in terms of their operations, it wouldn't be necessary. Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess my comment to Councillor Blackburn would be that over the years, our funding to an organization such as Nighthawk has equated to a more substantial number. And I think administration could be the key to making sure that the identified goals and objectives of the agreement between the storm and council are reported on regularly. I don't know if a council member being there does this any more than that.
Right. Now go ahead, Chris.
Thank you very much, Chair Minhas. I just want to throw in sort of an echoing statement of what Councillor Blackburn said earlier in the conversation. And I'm not opposed to having that or oversight on the Storm Hockey Board. I think having Councillor Platt there has been a great service to understanding what the storm situation is, and for the storm, giving them ideas on how they can maybe pull themselves up and keep moving along. But I guess my concern would be, as Councillor Blackburn mentioned earlier in regards to Grand Spirit Foundation, is that it is a regional board. And it looks like we're getting out of the business outside of, joint recreation and things with the county like ICF and Joint City County Council, Joint Regional Emergency Management, and the Tri-Muni. Peace Library Systems also is a multi-stakeholder regional represented municipally elected board. Nighthawk as well has representatives from the MD and from the County of Grande Prairie on there. Mighty Peace Watershed Alliance as well has members from all over the watershed, as well as members of the province that sit on that board. So it's a great opportunity to connect with people in Alberta, with the Alberta Energy Regulator and Alberta Environment Parks. So I think those all need to be considered as advocacy/priority, considering the way we're really looking at things nowadays is an expansive partnership, collaborative view, and we can't be getting out of those types of agreements at this point. So I would advocate for those additions to stay on Schedule B, or at least not be removed, and I look forward to future discussions. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Wade.
Thanks, Councillor Minhas. Just to echo that, I think one of the things that I found really good about being on the storm board is understanding their operations. And it was made, I think the comment was made earlier by Councillor Bressy about the Eastlink Advisory Committee having input from them on capital projects. And I see this as a huge opportunity with the storm board currently. We're talking about store clocks and other potential things that might be a good fit for a facility. But I think having that ability to be getting that information firsthand, especially if we're not going to have a Revolution Advisory Committee from our biggest tenant, it makes sense for me to be part of the storm board or a council member to be part of the storm board moving forward. To Mayor Gibbons' point earlier, though, I don't know if that means forever. Maybe for our term it makes sense. That maybe doesn't mean the next term's council, if the loan's paid back, needs to continue in that capacity. So I think keeping somebody on the storm board is good. It is a concern to some of the other comments about Nighthawk and a few other ones, but I do think that us keeping somebody on the storm board is a good thing at this point.
Thank you, Wade. Anybody else? I think Kevin O'Toole, you were looking for a while and you get behind, so you get to say something. Bill, you go ahead.
I'm probably going to send in a couple of concerns regarding the Combative Sports Commission, just to discuss rather than this venue here. It's some stuff that's just simple housekeeping. And but other than that, the things that I said earlier today, I still stick by them. And when it comes to the storm, I've got mixed emotions of that too. I think that we do have an obligation, I guess, when we fundraise them and supported them that way. And what Councillor Paulette had to say here about being the major tenant in the venue. We should be able to have some correspondence with a single individual that's on the board. So I would be okay with having our member from council or administration, for that matter, be on that board until debts are paid. And thank you.
Thank you. I think Mayor Gibbon was on the queue. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So appreciate the suggestion of incorporating these things and bring it back for our review. I think that makes good sense. And so along that line, Arlene, one thing that I could see is maybe in the whereases at the very start of the bylaw, those sort of set out the purpose. I mean, they're not the bylaw, but they sort of give the reader and council members the purpose of the bylaw. I could see a cross-reference to the council citizen engagement policy. Council has a policy that says why we want to do citizen engagement and sort of sets that out a little bit. I could see a cross-reference here, whereas the City of Grande Prairie Council has established a citizen engagement policy, because I mean, sort of the purpose of a lot of these is to, and at least I think, should be to engage our community in helping influence, or in some cases actually make decisions that impact them. And I think that's sort of, at a high order, that's sort of the purpose. I think a cross-reference from this bylaw to say this council policy is influencing why we have this bylaw might be helpful to sort of remind us of why we do this. The last whereas that's there sort of talks about getting expertise and strategic value, but it is not necessarily the principle of engaging the community and helping make decisions that impact them. So I just I would like to see a cross-reference to that citizen engagement bylaw as one of the whereas.
Well, thank you very much, Will, Mayor Gibbon. Anybody else on the queue?
Yeah, Councillor Minutes, I think you don't see me, but just to the comments about organizations such as the Storm, I've sort of always felt from the beginning that to me, it's sort of an all or nothing approach. We are in these organizations that Councillor Thiessen identified, or we're not in any of them. So we're in the group of them, or we're not in any of them. And so my concern from the beginning has been regional elected official representation. So for example, Nighthawk, if we're not at the table and the two other funding partners are, how that looks. I don't think either other council, although they may appreciate our input, they're not going to take our direction because we're not there. They're not going to stop sending people. And so those organizations that have other representation for us not to be there is very unfortunate. In regards to the Storm, I think there's decisions that are made at the Storm board table that are operational decisions that, in my opinion, are awkward for an elected official to be at, whether it's human resources decisions, whatever it may be. I think that puts an elected official at in a weird position per se. If it was to be there, for example, on CAB, you're there in an advisory role, fair enough. But to actually be voting on decisions that are operational decisions, in my opinion, puts a council member, any elected official, in an awkward position. But and back to an earlier comment that Councillor Bressie made in regards to alternates voting. My concern then is that all representations from all other municipalities have to be on the same page, because otherwise, if right now we have sort of an unwritten understanding that there's one representative from each municipality. If, as a city, we agree, yeah, let your alternates vote too, and the other municipalities don't abide by that sort of format, it's not a true representation of the region when the city's always sending two, the county's sending one, because that's sort of always what they've done, and the MD's sending one. And so in a composition, we need to all be on the same page. And I don't know if we'll get to that, because they're not going to take our recommendations that, hey, the city's doing it this way, where only one person votes. And so unless we have agreement from the other municipalities, I don't think it will work. So that's my comment.
All right. Okay.
Councillor Minhas, in response to Jackie's comment on alternates voting, often for external boards and committees, we don't actually make that rule. It is the external board or the external committee that incorporates that type of option into their own mandate, and we just abide by it. So what we can do as a municipality, and what council can do, is appoint an alternate for whatever reason based on our own requirement, but that alternate may or may not have any power based on the external mandate of that board or committee. We're just looking at it from our point of view that if, in fact, we have an appointed member for whatever reason that will not be able to attend or participate, we've put something in place on our end to continue the conversation or to sit at the table. But it would be up to the external board or committee to determine the powers of that alternate.
Thank you, Arlene. Dylan? Dylan?
Sorry, I was gonna say something similar to the clerk, but also that I think that we should be advocating for alternates to get a vote at these organizations. And by that, I don't mean if I'm an alternate and I'm going with the counselor who's the actual person there just to be informed on it, that I get a second vote. But I mean, if I'm the alternate, I'm the only city representative there, we should be advocating the city shouldn't lose its vote because our main counselor isn't there. That's more what I mean.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in because I do sit on a lot of externals. Thanks, Chairman Haas. I was going to say the same thing as Ms. Karbaszewski, but to Councillor Bressie's point, at our level, when we're appointed to these committees, we need to be advocating like directly with the executive of the committees and with the rest of the board or committee to change the terms of reference in the bylaws so that it enables not just us but other municipalities to have that same voting right, one vote per city, regardless if it's your standing member or your alternate. So, thanks.
Thank you, Chris. All right, any?
Councillor Minhas, Councillor Blackburn would like to speak.
Go ahead, Councillor Blackburn.
Yes, thank you. This has been a very interesting and very full discussion, and there have been a lot of recommendations made for changes. And I just wanted to give kudos to Ms. Karbaszewski for presenting us with a document that's given us a lot to work with. I hope you don't, aren't too discouraged by the number of things that had to change.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. My intent was to bring this document forward early enough this year to ensure that Council did get full opportunity to participate in the development of it. It's a document that contains many moving pieces, and it affects internal and external participation by yourselves and how administration is going to manage moving forward. So it's vital to have these conversations early so that we can have this kind of discussion. I was hoping, I would have been very disappointed if you had just said, yeah, it's good to go.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody now, so let me check. Nobody on the queue. I really appreciate, this was the best discussion, for this issue, and this long one, and lots things comes out. So now, I think we're looking for a motion to give back to the administration to see if they're gonna work on it. Who's gonna do it? Bill, go ahead, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I think it's a pretty simple motion. Actually, I'd move that we direct administration incorporate the feedback from today and present a further revised version of the bylaw at an upcoming meeting, period. And speaking to that, I will be really surprised if the next one is exactly what we want as well, considering how broad the discussion was today. So I would encourage council members just to kind of keep that in mind. But I think administration probably does have a recording of this. You know, hopefully they're recording the screen. They should be able to capture all of it. But yeah, but you know, as the director said, we're not under a time crunch to get this done. We easily have, you know, it was administration's previous expectation that was going to come in the fall. Let's give administration the chance to incorporate what they heard today, have a chance to review that. And then there are going to be some fundamental questions about what committees we think we should be on or not. That we'll have to decide. And those are probably yeses or nos at some point down the line. But for now, let's give administration a chance to capture what we said and give that another look when it comes back, and then we'll continue the discussion from there.
Thank you very much, Will. Mayor. Any discussion on the motion? Don't see it. So if it's not, all in favor? Thank you. Carry on. Nobody's against. So the next one is outline. What the hell? Outstanding items.
No, Councillor Minhas. Undeveloped residential land.
Undeveloped residential land. Sorry.
Yeah, and Councillor Minhas, I believe that it's a motion I made at council that led to this. So would you be all right if I tee this off?
Yeah.
Great. So kind of where this comes from is we've had a few applications at council for rezoning of land that's zoned as residential land and rezoning it to allow for farming activities. And there's a few reasons that have been expressed by the landowners for why they want the rezoning, but the primary reason I'm hearing is that they want tax relief. And we had this at our, as council knows, we had this at our last council meeting. We talked about Riverstone and we granted permission to do this in Riverstone. And as I've shared at our council meetings, I've got really grave concerns about this direction in terms of when it comes to tax revenue. One of the mandates of the Municipal Government Act is that we need to be equitable in the way that taxes are levied in our city. And for me, it's not equitable to say, hey, you get a tax discount if you pay thousands of dollars to rezone, and if you manage to get a bunch of politicians to agree to that rezoning. For me, it's equitable and it's in the spirit of the MGA. If we want to offer tax relief, that we offer it to all property owners of a certain class and that they all become eligible for it without paying an extra fee and without having to get politicians to agree to them. Now, how we do that, if we do want to give tax relief to undeveloped residential land, one option for that is the MGA does allow us to create property classes at the discretion of council. Basically, we get to create any property classes we want, and some may be judicially challenged or not, I don't know, but we do have the authority of the MGA to establish property taxes, different property tax classes. And I've asked administration to attach to your agenda a bylaw coming out of St. Albert, where they've actually developed a property class for undeveloped residential property that I think could work for us. What I'd note about St. Albert is they're taking an opposite task of what we're doing. My understanding is they actually tax undeveloped residential land at a higher rate than developed. But we could use the same thing to give a lower rate to undeveloped residential land. So if we want to keep on offering this tax reduction to certain property owners, then I hope council will consider a solution like this that is fair and equitable to everyone concerned and doesn't have to go through a very expensive political process to get approved.
Thank you, Dylan. So any comments on this? Anybody have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Chair Minhas. Councillor Bressie, I really appreciate the initiative that you undertook for this. As you know, you and I sort of share similar viewpoints on this. I guess just for this, we're not just talking about residential, we're talking about industrial and commercial as well, if we move forward with this discussion.
So my understanding, and administration is welcome to correct me, but my understanding is we have the ability to create separate classes of residential land. We don't have the ability to create separate classes of non-residential land. So while it might be worthwhile to do this for non-residential, it's a lot more, my understanding is it's a lot more difficult under the MGA to create a separate land class in the non-residential category.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on the queue? I can't see.
I'll go next, if that's okay, Councillor Minhas.
Yeah.
I appreciate the initiative. I guess my concern from the beginning, Councillor Bressie, has been at any time if we want to offer people an opportunity to pay less taxes, they're going to. My concern with just blanketing the property group at a lower class is if somebody is comfortable at paying what they're paying, why would we offer them an opportunity to pay less taxes out the get-go? I think that if you truly believe that your land should be reassessed, into a different class, then I think it's a good conversation at a council level. And I do think that you should pay what that costs to happen. To just reduce the entire group, I think it's just is reducing money or revenue for the city when that hasn't even been lobbied from a UDI or a lobby group to happen. So although, do I think the taxes overall are too high? Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, taxes are high. But second of all, just to blanket reduce the revenue, I don't think I won't support that. Thanks.
All right. Anybody else on the queue? Bill, go ahead.
Thanks. I really appreciate Councillor Minhas that it seems like my square is somewhere on your screen that you can see me because I guess I would say that I could see a policy on this, and I wonder if that's another way to do it rather than creating another class of property which has that challenge of industrial. Maybe it's more difficult in industrial than it is in residential. Council may want to establish a council policy on taxes on undeveloped properties. Because there's probably hopefully there would be some overarching logic of why we would or why we wouldn't, or under what circumstances we would or wouldn't, because we may want to be more strategic. And I think in that policy, we may be able to do, we could set a policy that says that we would refund a certain portion of, and so they would be taxed as normal with a refunded portion of that. Could be a mechanism that would avoid having to create another class potentially. But anyways, my point here is that rather than moving into creating another class of property and setting up a system to do that, maybe we want to have a policy discussion about why would we want to do this in the first place? Because it sounds like there might be a pretty big range of opinions on that. And if we want to do something, under what circumstances would we consider that? And then that policy could guide any required bylaws that would have to be established, or programs or practices or whatever else. So I see this as a policy discussion about what we want to do to deal with taxes on undeveloped properties. And we might all want to decide whether that's, do we want to give people a break so they can develop something rapidly and then still pay low taxes on it? Or do we want to encourage them not to develop until the market is ready? So, what we do with taxes could influence that. Like if we had really low taxes on properties that are, not yet built upon, then could it provide an incentive for somebody to do a whole bunch of work and just have it sitting waiting? Like, does that start to consume more land than we'd intended? Like, what are the unintended consequences of those kind of policy actions? I think all that is stuff that we could discuss at that policy level. And so for those reasons, I think a policy approach would be better. That could lead to any programs or other systems.
All right, Kevin O'Toole.
Yeah, I don't support this as it sits right now, Mr. Bressie. but I do like what Mayor Given is going for. We've only had 2 situations here in the last 2 years where they were both unique, different from each other. And I think that if we had a policy and we spent an afternoon brainstorming some ideas, some concepts, then we could develop a policy for sure. But as a tax class, I don't think I don't think the city is ready for that at this point in time. Yep. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let me see. And Wade, you go ahead.
Thanks, Councilor Menhoff. Yeah, I couldn't support this either. I think I kind of appreciate your intention, Councilor Bresty, but at the same time, we've had 2 or 3 of these in our entire term. I think these are those kind of red tape reduction things in some ways that let's not add more layers that don't need to be added. I also think this is a great opportunity for council to get a bit of a pulse check. You know, the 2 or 3 that have come forward, we've had good debates on. It doesn't mean you have to approve them or doesn't have to support them. But I do think it's a good pulse check to have our development community have that option to come to the table. I agree with Councillor Clayton 100%. I think if we put in a blanket policy, we might actually be losing revenue from this because now they don't have to apply and pay fees. They automatically would get potentially a lower rate. So I don't know what the benefit to the city of having this policy. And I'm perfectly comfortable if it's 1 or 2 times a year as a council that we have a person come in and present to us, and we make our best judgments. That's why we got elected. And I don't think a policy here actually helps the city as much as I think Councillor Bresty hopes it will. I don't think it's going to help the city. I think it loses revenue. And I actually think we lose a pulse check and a touch point with our members of the development community, which I don't think we want to do. I think that's a great opportunity for us to have those conversations, whether we like them or not. I think it gives them an opportunity. So I couldn't support this in probably any form, even a policy discussion. I don't think it's really necessary. This is a 1 or 2 times a term, maybe 3 times a term thing. And those are the exact things I don't want to see us create policy over, is 1 or 2 times a year to start letting and ask administration to put a bunch of work and effort into something that probably creates less time for us to deal with at council than them partying around making policies and all kinds of things and have them managing yet another policy or bylaw.
Okay, anybody? Okay, Dylan, go ahead.
I may take one last shot at this. What's the right direction? Is it creating a policy class or a tax class to creating a policy? Whatever direction council wants to go is fine, but I really hope we take some direction with this in terms of this is the most profound, I'm profoundly disturbed by the direction we're taking with this. This isn't something where I'm going, hey, I disagree with council, but I can see the other side. I'm honestly profoundly disturbed by some of the comments that I'm hearing out of this. In terms of our tax system in Alberta for property tax is a fundamental underpinning of it is that it's supposed to be based on mass appraisal. Mass appraisal is how the provincial government has set it up to make sure that this is a system that is fair, is equitable, isn't open to corruption, isn't open to nepotism. And we are completely stepping outside of that mass appraisal property when we say, hey, council will touch individual conversations to offer tax relief. We're stepping completely outside of that mass appraisal that's been set up. And I think it opens us up in future councils and future terms to have very serious consequences to that. This isn't something where I just disagree, but I can see the other side. I'm completely and profoundly disturbed by the direction that we're taking by saying, yeah, mass appraisal, it's not important to our property tax system when it comes to these types of properties in Grande Prairie. So I really hope that council will figure out some way. I've presented one solution, maybe there are other solutions, but I really hope we'll figure out some way to continue to not step outside of the spirit of the MGA, not step outside of mass appraisal, figure out how are we going to do this in a fair and equitable way that meets the intention of the province and its property tax system, which we're not doing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. For nobody on the queue, I got a couple things to say. I cannot support this, Mr. Dillon. I know you're a little bit frustrated on this. It's not supporting. The reason was, like Kevin said, the unique last couple things, 3 times we did. And also the property value is not tax saving. They do the appraisal of the value of the property. If it's in the city, value is going to be maybe a little bit less than when you cut the lots, but it's not. And other side, we were saying we are open for the business. This was the last 3 years, our economy was so bad. And do we want to lose our business people not to come to Grande Prairie, or we try to help them out on the hard time to survive through, and then we still collect the tax on the long run? If you look at the long run, we will be benefiting, but in short term, you're right, we could collect the tax and kill some business and tell them to go away. Sorry to say this, but this is my feeling is personally, I can't support it. So anybody else? What are we gonna do with this option to, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, you know, I was going to say, for Councillor Bressy's benefit, you know, there are opportunities, you know, even though he's not on this committee and so doesn't get a chance to make motions here, that's why we have the notice of motion provision in our procedure bylaw. If there's an issue that is important to a council member, they can bring it forward to council for a vote, and it's not unreasonable for, you know, so I raise that because I would hate for any individual member of council to be frustrated by our committee structure. I think our committee structure is useful. But we also have this other part built in for notice of motion. So, Councillor Bressy, if it's something that you really feel passionate about and you feel that council, you know, needs to be explicit about and sort of state, you know, have a vote on, no problem. I would suggest bring a resolution to council using notice of motion. That's what it's there for. That way, it's sort of like a release valve. So nobody is frustrated by our process and doesn't get a chance to talk about the things that they want to talk about, or things don't get to the council table that council members think need to. That's totally fair. Again, I guess, so I encourage you to think about that. If this dies here today, or sort of seems to, you have that release valve and bring something forward, and you're more than capable of either developing a policy or a recommendation or direction to administration. I think that that's totally fine. And I think just one observation that I would make, I've never seen any past council provide any of these kinds of variances or changes. I think this really speaks to the nature of our group that has been elected, that there is a majority, not always 100%, but there's been a majority that are willing to do these kinds of things. And that speaks to this group of people that are assembled here. The next group of people after the next election could just be us again, and we make the same kinds of decisions, or it could be a different group of people who have different priorities and might not be as open to that. I would say that I think that these decisions are reflective of this council's open for business attitude, for better or worse. But if this is an issue that you think that you need to take forward, that's not unfair, that's not unreasonable, that's not being bullheaded. It's a council member wanting council to vote on something that's important, and that's why we have that notice of motion provision.
Thank you, Mayor, given to updating. So do we need any motion on this one, or to send it to the administration or anything for this one?
I can make a motion to receive item 2.1 for information.
Okay, motion is on the table. Any thing to say? Wade, you go ahead.
I guess just the one thing that we haven't been sitting me now with Dylan's on this is we haven't heard administration's take on this, and I'm kind of curious if maybe Director Bork would want to speak to this, or one of the directors on what they see of this. I mean, I appreciate Mayor Gibbons saying, hey, notice motion's the way to go. I do feel for Councillor Bressy, he's brought this up many times, and I've even said to myself, we don't have a policy that protects us from this, so till we do, this is how we have to do it. So, and I'm fine with that, but if the council wants to have a discussion about this, I'm not sure if receiving information is going to be enough. So I'm kind of curious to hear what Mr. Bork may have to say on that.
Any director, Shane, or Brian?
Chairman Haas, if this is just to receive this information, administration won't be bringing this forward. We would wait for a future notice of motion. A suggestion we would have, and I see Brian popping in, he can maybe talk about some of the current context and what he's hearing. But if there is any motion, that it provide clear direction on what council's goal is in bringing forward a report. So is not just to have a discussion, but is it to increase development? Is it to reduce taxes? And then we would be able to provide some more analysis on what the financial impact would be to the whole organization and residents. But I'll let I see Director Glavin had something to add.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Haas. So what we're seeing right now is some odd practices emerging that are utilizing tools available in planning and engineering around subdivision and rezoning to manage taxes that isn't really the purpose of those tools. You know, some of the landowners that we deal with, I don't think are excited that they are using those tools in order to manage their subdivision planning or rezonings, because it is an extra hurdle that they have to then go through. It's more applications, it's more consulting fees. Long story short, it's a more convoluted process to manage taxes through planning and engineering as opposed to a tax class. And that's kind of the gist of what we're hearing from some people internally and externally.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Anything else, Wade, that you're happy with it? Okay. So Kevin, go ahead, Bill.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say to Director Glavin's point, and you know, maybe that's sort of the point, that it is complicated and it's painful and annoying, and that means it's kind of a high bar. Like, you have to be pretty committed or think that there's a really important reason to do it. And so maybe that's a bit of unintentional deterrent to the current system, or making it too easy, you know, might swing it the other way. You have to really think there's a good purpose and good reason to do it. And so just sort of make that observation that maybe unintentionally some of the checks and balances are kind of there. And that might be something for Councillor Bresty to think about in terms of, you know, any sort of policy or approach or other system that he might want to think about, is what sort of checks and balances would be there to manage the revenue issue, like Councillor Clayton and Councillor Plott raised, as well as the sort of usability and customer service side that this council's placed a priority on in the past. But I'm completely in support of the motion to receive for information. I'm not ready to act on it today. I'd be happy to consider something if it came to council and look at it at face value at that time. But today, I don't see it. I don't have a burning desire to give administration any other direction at this time.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I think I'm agree with you at that point, and go ahead. So motion is on the table. If nobody is in the queue, all in favor? Motion carried. Eunice, is she? Did she vote?
Yes.
Eunice?
I did, yeah, I voted in.
Thank you. So motion, and go ahead. And the next item is outstanding list.
Outstanding items.
I can speak to that, Chairman Haas. We've left item 1041, election signs. The clerk has presented an initial draft, and we're still doing some work on some future some additional maps to provide future options for putting additional signs in the community. So that'll come forward. We don't have a date yet, but in the next couple of meetings here, we're working towards that. No changes today.
Thank you very much, Shane. Can somebody put the motion, receive the go ahead, Count.
I'll accept the outstanding items listed as presented.
All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much. With that, we are adjourned. And the next one is, I think, Wade.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Minhas. Yeah, we'll move into our Protected and Social Services agenda now. And we'll start, and hopefully he's on the line with the Director Manuel to give us a verbal service update, please.
Okay, good morning. So I'll start with the Rcmp. The Rcmp are saying that they're having lower call volumes slightly than they traditionally have as a result of the COVID event. They had a significant drug seizure a couple weeks ago in which they recovered a great deal amount of fentanyl, methamphetamine, cocaine, and a bunch of cash. So several can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. So several individuals were arrested in conjunction with that, and it involved the cooperation of Fort St. John, Dawson Creek, and our local Rcmp. Additionally, they had a traffic collision the other day in which they were investigating, and somebody that fled the scene they later caught up to and recovered 2 loaded handguns on them. So good proactive work that's occurring there. With enforcement services, they continue to attend their priority calls for service. They're also responsible for following up on public health complaints related to people failing to meet the requirements of the Chief Medical Officer, and they are providing security at some of our GPREP-related activities. Additionally, the fire department is regular business. Several staff are involved in the GPREP activities. In community social development, they are presently administering through FCSS several provincial grants related to the COVID event that the province is funding in regard to NGOs and vulnerable persons. Additionally, their staff, again, are being heavily utilized by GPREP in our planning and operations, particularly in regard to vulnerable persons. And the director's office in GPREP, well, it's fairly self-explained. You get a daily update regarding what we're working on, but Wendy and I are fully engaged, as is Jennifer Wood, in operating our emergency coordination center. So that's kind of the high level what's going on in the service area right now. Any questions?
Sorry, so we'll start with Mayor Gibbon. I've seen Councillor Thiessen. You can go after that, please.
Okay. Thanks, Chris, for the update. So on the SPSS, do you know off the top of your head how many local organizations have applied for that enhanced funding? Do we have any that have made applications through the city so far?
I know applications have been made, and there's actually a board that consists of FCSS partners, not just the city. So I'm not entirely sure. I can certainly circulate that information back, though.
Yeah, if we could get it, and if we're dealing with it on a regional basis, that's great. So the boards is the sort of FCSS staff from across all the municipalities in the region, in the GPREP region, is that right?
I think FCSS is a little broader than just the GPREP region, but my understanding is that, yes, it's a board.
Okay. Yeah, could we get a little bit more detail emailed to us about sort of who's applied and who sort of serves within city limits? That'd be really helpful.
Committee meeting.
And then, yeah, so that'd be really helpful to know sort of how that's all working. And then I just wonder, I can see, it looks like you're can you tell us a little bit about sort of your work environment or what you're doing? I know you've been fully engaged in the GPREP system. It looks like you're at South Bear Creek. Are you living there now? Have you pitched the tent? What's going on?
It often feels as though I'm living here, yes. There's a handful of key personnel that are here with me, spaced out appropriately, except a moment ago. So what we do is the majority of our operations, we have dozens of people that are working virtually, executing tasks that our command staff generate. And then obviously we have the operational components out in the field and at some specific sites. The big thing is we look at it from a few perspectives. Obviously, we activated our emergency coordination center in GPREP and are coordinating our 6 municipalities' response regarding to COVID. But outside of COVID, we have an all hazards approach. So we know that we have spring runoff right now. So we also have to be cognizant of the events regarding overland flooding. We're also preparing for wildfire season and frankly just creating and maintaining situational awareness about all the different threats that exist around our communities and our region. Aside from that, we have a pretty strong planning contingent that is working towards identifying what our future needs may be as a result of any of these events or the COVID event. Operations is the day-to-day people that are executing the plans that we have in place. And there's a number of people that are required for logistical support, finance support, and those areas. When it's all said and done, by the end of this week, we expect we'll probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 people working on this under our direct control, anyways.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Chair Palat. I know you have lots to think about, Director Manuel, but I work with the John Howard Society boards of both federally and provincially. A big part of what we are doing nationally and provincially is advocating for the justifiable release of nonviolent criminals that are held in the corrections system. I know in Ontario recently, there was, they did have a big release of criminals that are temporarily being held on bail so that they can self-isolate properly until this COVID situation passes. In my work with the justice system through John Howard, I know that Alberta has a long-time policy that authorizes the temporary release of low-risk nonviolent offenders that meet certain criteria, including medical needs, such as the spread of this virus. Have we had any conversations with the RCMP, Corrections, or Alberta Justice on what their next steps are and how we might proceed with that in our community?
Certainly. So we've had those conversations, and I can tell you, based off our experience, that there's not many people in prison right now. So the vast majority of people from our Grande Prairie region that would have been in prison would have been remanded prisoners. So these are essentially people that were awaiting trial. So they are eligible for bail and release on recognizance and other release measures. The vast majority of those folks, other than the absolutely necessary incarcerations, are out and about, and we've had interaction with a number of them to support in whether it's isolation requirements or temporary lodging and those sorts of things. So we do have regular contact now with Peace River Correctional Center, and they do give us heads ups as to possible concerns and medical related issues and so on.
So are we being given any resources, or will there be a repayment of resources put in to help manage this through Alberta Justice in our community?
In short, the answer is probably no.
Okay.
Basically, we're given the heads up that the people are being released. Like I said, at this point though, it's already occurred. The other thing is nobody knew is going to jail, right? The police things that may get people remanded historically while they're pending trial are just not going to happen right now. And if the courts are at a snail's pace as far as what they're operating, we can't expect that they're going to be sentencing new people into incarceration. So the gist of it is, at this point, until we can identify a specific need or request from the province, which we haven't had from a justice perspective, we're more or less just managing it.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Chris.
Councillor Blackburn?
Thank you, Councillor Palat. Two questions for Director Manuel regarding COVID-19. I'll ask them one at a time. The first one is, we've had 2 cases reported in Grande Prairie, both of them recovered, and it's been a good long time since there has been a change. Is there any testing going on here?
So absolutely, there has been testing occurring. That being said, up until today, that testing was very limited in that it was very specific demographics that were tested, such as healthcare workers. So we have voted very well in that regard. The announcement by the Chief Medical Officer yesterday that basically anybody that has any concern is eligible for testing, I can pretty much assure you we will see a rise in the number of confirmed cases we have in the region. Now, what we'll be monitoring is the medical impacts and whether it's simply a confirmed rise. We know that there's additional cases in the community. There has to be, just statistically, but they may just not have had the medical complications. So the thing that we're monitoring closely is hospitalization, ICU utilization, which we've done, which has been fairly well for the Grande Prairie region so far, but something to keep an eye on. I think we got a lot of feedback on this weekend about people getting a little bit more lax in the social distancing, boredom shopping, all those sorts of things that we had warned about prior to the weekend, that it evolved into be a problem at some locations. So 14 days from now is when we'll see whether there was any impacts to that or not, and whether we see any spike related to people a little less compliant with those conditions.
Thank you. And my second question does relate to social distancing. As the weather improves, which I recognize is only happening by minuscule steps at the moment, I haven't heard anything about concerns about people disregarding social distancing guidelines here in Grande Prairie. And I'm wondering whether that has been a problem or whether we're anticipating that it might be a problem that we're going to have to monitor and control.
So it's, I can tell you what our next phase is here at GPREP is we're starting out planning to have more business liaison support. So there's some stores that are doing an absolutely fantastic job of regulating their customer volumes, implementing preventative measures, good social distancing, best practices. And there's other places that need some more support in that regard, either support in understanding what the best practices are and implementing them, or additionally, reinforcing the message with their customers as well. We got a lot of feedback this weekend from our liaison officers that frontline workers in the grocery stores and stuff, a number of them are taking a lot of abuse from people, and it's becoming fairly untenable for some. So we are looking to roll out a program that's going to have us have more bodies in businesses from a GPREP perspective to provide advice, to have a physical presence. So that's something we're working on rolling out in the next week. When it comes to the outdoor spaces, we expect we're going to see more congregation. It is a challenging environment right now because when you see that there's no active cases in Grande Prairie, you can understand where people believe that the risk is lower, and we all struggle with that in our minds. If it maintains that way, there's a good chance that we see some letting up of restrictions. But I think at this point, it's a false security in that now that we're testing the broader community, we'll have a way better understanding of what the actual infections are. And because to date, the numbers don't reflect the reality.
Okay, Councillor, was that everything for you, Councillor Blackburn? Okay, Councillor Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Chair Palat. Mr. Manuel, there's been a lot of talk on social media about quarantine restrictions and people not self-isolating. And on some threads, what the City of Grande Prairie has been doing about it or what we may plan to do about it. Do we have any active plans that we've discussed with the province or Alberta Health Services for the enforcement of quarantining people into their self-isolation period of 10 to 14 days if they have contacted COVID?
So if somebody has confirmed COVID, 100% we have an enforcement plan in place, and we'll execute it with the Rcmp and the peace officers in conjunction with Alberta Health if necessary. Again, that hasn't been a local concern for us. Certainly it's been problematic in some other places. In regard to people self-isolating, that's a little bit different. We're going to rely primarily on the education component around the self-isolation. But if it's confirmed COVID or reasonably believed to be COVID, we're pretty stringent.
Okay, so can you just explain to me briefly sort of like the chain of command? If somebody gets COVID, Alberta Health Services, do they then inform us and we inform the Rcmp, or how does that work? How are we aware of any infections?
Yeah, so we do have there's certainly obviously a number of, I shouldn't say it's a free flow of information because Alberta Health has a lot of privacy concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they do, through their public health inspectors, have mechanisms to share that information when it becomes necessary from an enforcement clause.
Okay, that's really good to know. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for anybody? Or I know I had a couple if nobody else has any. Okay, so Councillor or Director Manuel, can you maybe just going back to one question earlier about the prisoners being released and the unfortunately the city might be just bearing the cost on that. Am I safe to assume that we're setting up a coding on all the costing that would be incurred from the policing, so we will have a dollar amount that we could potentially lobby the province for later, and also have a dollar amount to show our community if this was another offload from the province that we have to eat as municipal?
Yeah, so at this point, we're not seeing additional policing costs. Like I said, if anything, our crime rate's actually down a little bit right now. So it's positive in that regard. Certainly where we're seeing costs would be on the social services side, where, you know, providing meals and accommodations and those sorts of things. Now those costs are tracked and the province will cover those. So we feel pretty confident in regard to that. Certainly we are a little wary. I'm always a little wary around springtime in Grande Prairie because we have had a large degree of street engaged tourism in the past. That's complicated a little bit right now because there's no bus lines and stuff running, which is double-edged because it means if people get here, it's much more challenging for us to return them to their home communities. But there is certainly some concern on my side that, again, us being the regional center, people that are cooped up in their remote communities may be inclined to try to make their way to Grande Prairie and put additional stress on our systems. So we're monitoring that fairly closely and trying to mitigate it as best we can. I think the other thing we noticed is so far to date, our numbers are down from last year on our street engaged population, which is positive. However, I think with the social distancing and people self-isolating, if you were just to take a drive around, you might believe that it's more prevalent, particularly maybe around downtown. But the numbers are actually down. I think it's just that when you don't mix in the general public and businesses being open, you just see a greater concentration of one demographic.
Okay. I'll get just one other question. I'll get to you, Councillor Minhas. Have we had any conversations with the province about the court systems being reopened? I guess for me, I'm a big believer that wherever we can, we should be allowing work to continue on, and I can't see how we'd be putting people at harm's way to have a court system open with the way that they can be set up. Is there any conversations happening with the province about getting our court systems back on track and open and operational?
So one of the things that the province announced when they were doing their highway money announcement for infrastructure investment is a little less public, but they did announce funding for courtroom technology. And if anything, this may speak to one of the advocacy items that we've had previously made as a council to Alberta Justice, saying that they weren't effectively utilizing technology in regular times, let alone COVID times. So I believe they heard that message loud and clear, and this has provided an opportunity for them to assess their processes. So I do think that they are keen and understand that they can't move forward in their former fashion and that they will implement, hopefully in a timely manner, new procedures and technology to continue.
Okay. Councillor Minhas, did you have your hand up earlier?
Yes, I got one question, Chris Manuel. What about the domestic violence? Is increased a little bit? You said our crime is going down, but hearing on the national news, domestic crime is going up in Grande Prairie. Do you have any idea if it's going up or down?
So I'll have at our next committee meeting, I'm actually going to have a quarterly report on the Rcmp activities that will break down the specific call types. I can tell you that unfortunately, over the past year, domestic violence calls for service have increased rapidly in our area. That being said, in relation to the COVID event, so far we haven't seen a further escalation. So we already were trending in the wrong direction, and we were significantly higher. And in a couple of weeks, you'll have that exact number, but we were significantly higher than we had previously been. But as a result of this event, it hasn't spiked it any further. So it's a double-edged sword. So we're higher than we should be, trending higher than we historically have been, but it's not related to COVID. So we haven't further complicated that yet. But we do, as a community, likely need to take some greater steps to resolve that.
Okay. Councillor O'Toole?
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to comment, Chris, your report was excellent. A lot of information that is very valid. I didn't get to ask too many questions because they were already asked prior, but these are some of the questions that were asked to me over the last 10 days that, you know, the numbers and stuff like that. So thank you very much for the insight. And I was just wondering how things are down there where you're at. What's the mood? People getting a little tired and want this movie to be over, or they're willing to go at her some more?
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually my priority over the past week and into today was we've been leaning on a pretty tight team of people for the last 6 weeks now. And we do obviously have greater human resource capacity than what we're utilizing. So we are planning to, in the next week here, implement a second team. So essentially, we'll rotate people through kind of a week at a time through our various command and the key positions within GPREP. So it should keep people a little fresher, because we do acknowledge that we could be running for, even as the community returns, there will be a gradual return. So we'll still have to support things that emerge. We have developed some excellent processes and are refining those more. Like I said, this is the first time. Usually when we have a big event, we'll put 50 people into one room and hash out all of our needs and actions and tactics. And now we're doing that via computer and telephone. And it's a change to the way we do things. So we've had to adapt on the fly. But overall, I can say that the mood is pretty good. I think we feel very confident in where we're headed. And I think I can say from my perspective, I feel as though our community is going to be well prepared, especially considering, you know, a top of mind issue right now is overland flood with the rapid melting of snow, not so much for the city of Grande Prairie, but for some of our surrounding municipalities. And the plans I've seen generated and put in place regarding that put us so much further ahead than we've been in the past. They're already doing mitigation efforts. We have contingencies. We have procurement. It's actually something really nice to see, and something that didn't exist as recently as a couple years ago. So a lot of positive things.
Just one more comment. I'm sure that you've tried just about every bit of technology, and I'm sure when this is all over, you're probably going to have a list of improvements that we might make. And so I'm looking forward to that report. And let's try and not get procurement involved too much. Take care.
I can tell you that it's going to be difficult for Horacio to get me out of this building. I'm pretty happy down here. So.
I guess on that, Director Manuel, I did have one more comment, but I did want to say, one thing that, I do feel that, our community and GPREP's done an amazing job. We were one of the first cities to start shutting down facilities, and that's a good reason why some of our numbers are trending as low as they are. So kudos to GPREP and the administration to push those on council. And I know I wasn't ready to start shutting things down, but I'm glad we did. Having said that, because we've been very, very proactive, are you hearing anything from GPREP of what this looks like coming out of it? I'm feeling an awful lot of anxiety from business community saying, what does this look like? When do I get open? If I do open, what does it look like? And I guess I'm honestly not hearing a lot of conversations provincially about that. And I think in light of people getting frustrated, what I don't want to have happen is people, because we're such an entrepreneurial kind of gunslinging sort of town, that people come up with their own ideas. I'm wondering if there's going to be a forum for GPREP to start listening to the business community, to take advocacy to the province and saying, if I could prove how to open my XYZ business and I kept my staff and my customers safe, where would they go with that information?
Yep. So that's a great point, Councillor Palat. So that actually feeds really well into when I mentioned that business liaison role and how we wanted to support the businesses implementing their social distancing measures and whatnot. So that was intended to initially assist our essential businesses, the ones that are operating today. But it can certainly evolve into how do we bring additional businesses online and have those mitigation strategies. A huge portion of the next wave of GPRIP activity is going to be working with our economic development partners in the city and the county. We actually do have them tied in with us now, and we are going to. The next phase of this for us is going to be really recovery. How do we get the community to recover? And it will be a gradual process. But like you said, just like we had trigger points to lock things down, we're going to have trigger points to open things up. And I agree with you. We're all eager to return things to normal as quick as, or the new normal as quick as we can.
Okay, I really appreciate hearing that, because I think the word recovery for a lot of people means different things, but having that conversation starts recovery for a lot of people, so I'm looking forward to those conversations. Is there any other questions for Director Manuel before we move on to the outstanding item list? No? Okay. Director Manuel, did you? Sorry.
No, I have none.
No, okay.
I have none.
Okay. So, Chris, did you want to take us through the outstanding items list? And
yeah, I can. I can't believe I'm going to do this to myself, but I will. So we'll start with item 1072, I believe it is, vehicle for hire. That's the only item on the list here right now. I think I just have to shelve because we just don't have the ability to move it forward in the way it needs to move forward, and it's tied to our business licensing, and obviously we're not going to do anything with business licensing while this is occurring. So I'm going to ask that we revise the date to September. And we frankly may even have to revisit it at that time. But that item particularly, we need to push down the road. In regard to item 1060, which is the Community Safety Initiative, frankly, all of the remaining items, so we have Community Safety Initiative, we have the Protective Services Quarterly Reports, the Police Advisory Committee, Terms of Reference, and the Traffic Enforcement Efficiency. I told Horacio I'll bring those all back to you guys April 28th and clear off my list. So, a little aspirational, but I'm committed. I'm pretty sure that most of these are in pretty good spots to just do a little touch-up work on and bring forward, and we should be able to have a fairly robust Protective and Social Services Committee meeting on the 28th. Okay,
sounds good. I see Councillor Bressy had a comment.
Yeah, just a question relating to item 1055, traffic enforcement efficiency. Then I was assuming we'd have an opportunity to talk about photo radar. And is our contract up for renewal on May 1st?
No, the contract's up for renewal May 31st, and traffic enforcement efficiency will essentially address my recommendation on what we do with that program.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Director Manuel about the outstanding items? Councillor Thiessen?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Palat. Just a comment, then I'll be prepared to make a motion. I'm okay with pushing the vehicle for hire bylaw down the road. I was actually thinking, we're probably not going to be able to deal with it until September, so hearing that actually come out of your mouth, Chris, was pretty awesome. But I do think that it is something that we can't shelf for the long haul, especially with the businesses that came in. Part of their peak time and what they wanted to address was especially during the holiday periods where people may be going out and being more social and having a bit more equity along the licensing lines. So I think September is timely, and I think it also gives us enough time to get there. But I'd caution to kicking it down the road a little bit more, especially just for perspective and how it looks on council and administration. At least we can deal with it and take care of it then. But with that being said, I would make a motion to approve the outstanding items list as amended.
Okay, any other discussion or debate? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Director Manuel, for the updates. And I think that closes off our Protective and Social Services agenda. Mayor Gibbon, did you want to have any last comments before we close off? So, no?
Oh, no, thanks for that opportunity. Just so council members know, I believe members of the media were invited to listen in on this call. I'm going to do a media availability with them this afternoon to answer any questions. If they had anything specific for any of you individually, I'll direct them to follow up with you specifically using sort of the city to get in touch with you. But yeah, so we're developing our new normal for committees, and I think great job, chairs. You all ran great meetings. Thanks very much.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Peace and be well.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.